Hey guys, my name is Julia and I'm the creator of Crazy Pepper channel. Today we will discuss the story you sent me. If you like the content, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment down below. So let's start it.
I was shocked when I caught my wife with him in my house. My wife and I had a wonderful courtship. I felt as though we had so much in common. I was the happiest man on earth. When a couple of months after we got married, everything changed. My sister got married, and my wife's feelings were hurt as she was not invited to be in the wedding. Shortly after, my wife told me that she overheard my mother telling some of the other wedding party that she was just a gold digger and not very pretty, and definitely not good enough for her son. It has been a living nightmare ever since. A full-blown competition to see who can hate the other more. My wife all but stopped having love with me because she was mad at my mother. Our entire first year of marriage, we had closeness only 4 times. She says it was because I didn't stick up for her enough. But I was doing my best to keep some semblance of peace I could between my wife and extended family. Well, as you can probably imagine, as a man in my late 20s who was constantly arguing, she said, between my wife and parents, barely getting any action at home, and surrounded by attractive females at my job, I started fantasizing about a different life. Over the next few years, I had 2 one-night stands and would eventually have to meet that reckoning. My wife wanted to start a family, and I was more than eager. I had always wanted kids, and in some twisted way also probably hoped it would cement our marriage. We had 2 wonderful little girls 2 years apart. Then, one Mother's Day, I lost it. I had invited my mother to come over to our house, where she and my wife began attempting to out-disrespect the other. Another pissing contest to see who was more in control over me, and whose side I would take. And a huge argument ensued between them. I remember tears, feeling helpless and trapped, and briefly contemplating blowing my brains out just to end it all. Quickly, my love for my kids grasped me from my self-pity tantrum. I thought of Nietzsche and being a man for a change. I decided right then and there I was just finished. Over the course of the next week, I found an apartment and had one of my best friends help me move an adequate portion of our furniture there. Total waste of money, because I usually come home to sleep with my kids at night anyway. But in my mind, I was getting the ball rolling. My wife was completely shocked, begging my friend to convince me to come back. She even started seeing a counselor to work on her issues with my mom. They actually attempted to mend fences, and my mother said that period was the nicest she ever had been. I had been low levels flirtatious with a pretty young woman at work, and I instantly ramped it up. We started emailing, flirting more at work, very stupid, and actually made out a couple of times. Then my wife discovered the emails. Now the ultimatum was thrown back at me. My girls were young, and I knew I would miss them dearly. The thought of another man possibly moving in and living around my sweet, innocent little girls also petrified me. I took them for a drive, and we had a long talk. I promised them that I would never, ever leave them. I ended it with the work colleague, broke my lease, and had my friend help me move everything back home. I committed to working things out. I still loved my wife. I just wanted the animosity between her and my family to cease. They didn't have to like each other, just be civil. Now I had to deal with my infidelity and the girl from work. Although we never had intercourse, I never even removed my clothes. It didn't matter. I cheated. We started couples counseling, and I revealed my 2 previous indiscretions. For the next couple of years, I endured daily reminders of what a piece of stuff I was. Vindictive, venomous, stinging reminders of the dirty, lying dog I was. I believed it all, too. Repeatedly pumped for details, demanded to justify my lack of soul. She told all of her family and friends everything. She didn't think she could ever trust me again. This had become my burden to bear, I told myself, so long as I wanted to keep my promise to my girls. My friend, who had helped me move with the apartment, still came around from time to time, and my kids were close friends with his kids. Although always eager to knock me back down a couple of notches, my wife became particularly vicious with her words towards me when he was there. This escalated over months. My friend and I live 5 minutes from each other, so it was never a surprise for him to come by and drop off this or that. But one day, I came home. He and my wife were sitting outside talking, and he just had a strange look on his face. I would characterize it as part surprise, part guilt. The next time he came over, it was to show me his new Harley. My wife had never ridden on a Harley, and she asked if I minded if he took her for a ride. I said, sure, no problem. They were gone for an hour. Yeah, not the ride I had in mind. Now my suspicions are up. So I start asking her some questions, and get told it's my guilty conscience. Maybe I'm screwing around on her again. I'm the scumbag cheater, not her, etc. Soon after, I was downloading the pics off our digital camera, and I saw a picture of the two of them sitting on the tailgate of his truck parked in the middle of our front yard. The pic was taken from inside the house, so I asked my 8-year-old daughter if she knows anything about it. All she said was, "I took it, Daddy. Tony has been coming over a lot lately." Not even a month later, our two families were taking the kids on a river float trip and had the cabins already reserved. So I keep my mouth shut and play along. The final night, the kids went to bed and we 3 adults were sitting on the outdoor deck talking. My wife was a little tipsy and starts in about cheaters and what an a-hole I am. She then shifts gears and insists that I start drinking. At first I decline, but she seems genuinely irritated, so I grab a beer and pretend to imbibe. After several beers stealthily poured out, we move inside and I call it a night. I head to the bedroom and silently lie down in the pitch black, listening to every word. The banters and laughs gradually diminish to whispers. Then I hear the smooching sound of kisses. Heart now racing, I silently rise from the bed and glide over to the door. As I step around the corner, he is sitting with legs spread and she is standing between them, leaning over, lips locked. I can distinctly recall the French kissing motion of their bulging, undulating cheeks. The look on his face was priceless, especially as I strode over to the table and picked up my bag containing my .38. She immediately began mumbling about trying to find something as she darted out the door and onto the deck. I slept that night with a .38 in my hand, pressed flat against my chest. The drive home with the kids the next morning was deafeningly silent. Once we returned home, I began some detective work and discovered from our phone bill that they had been texting each other daily for 8 to 9 months, up to 600 texts and 30 pics per month. I couldn't see any of the texts or pics, which is probably for the better. God knows what they were doing in my house while I was at work, but I know too. I'm sure they would disagree after reading all of this, but I'm not a complete moron. As to my initial reaction, aside from the obvious devastating sadness and betrayal from both wife and supposed longtime friend, was surprisingly relief. As you can imagine, the subject of her glaring hypocrisy immediately silenced her vitriol, so I'm no longer subject to that verbal offense. Listening to her make lame excuses for her behavior, particularly to our marriage counselor, after so many sessions of ripping me to shreds, I was drowning in schadenfreude. Honestly, I have yet to overcome it, but I'm working on it. I have a great relationship with my daughters, and that is all that matters to me now. I blame both of the women, and now I'm borderline misogynist, but mostly I blame myself for putting up with that childish crap for all that time.
And our last story.
My heart sank when I found out what my cheating wife was really doing at a nightclub while I was at home with our baby. Our relationship has been on the rocks for a while, but a few months ago we started counseling. And at the end of April, we told our therapist that everything was so much better and that we wanted to wait a few extra weeks before our next meeting. However, in May, she started spending more and more time away and staying out later, sometimes 12 to 3 a.m., at her weekly karaoke thing with her friends while I was home watching our 3-year-old. Then she started spending an extra night at karaoke and going to the pool with her friends on the weekends. After she told me that one of her other friends was leaving her husband for a guy she met on Facebook, I started checking up on my wife's texts and Facebook messages. She was talking to an old high school friend on Facebook who I did not know and who was asking to talk dirty to her. I found that she had been texting one guy in particular from the bar every single day for at least a month and visited to his house twice when she said she was going to the pool. I don't know everything they talked about as she deleted most of the messages, but I ordered a text history which showed numbers and times. I found a conversation with one of her girlfriends who called the guy from karaoke that thing you got going on the side, and another conversation where she said she wanted to cry because he was all over another girl. When I confronted her, she said she just wanted to be friends with him, but he had a boner when she left after her second visit to his place, and that ended their relationship since she felt like his motives weren't acceptable. As far as I can tell from her text message history, that really was the end of their relationship. However, I saw a message from him on Facebook a few weeks later, which she claims was unsolicited on her part. I asked her to block him, and she agreed. And after a few days, I went ahead and blocked him to see what she would do. 2 weeks later, she unblocked him. I haven't found other evidence that she's still talking to him, or that their relationship went any further than hanging out with his roommate at his house. But I feel very uncomfortable that she has unblocked him and continues to talk to his roommate. When I ask her to quit talking to his roommate and block the guys on Facebook who said they want to talk dirty to her, her response is that she can talk to whoever she wants. I also told her I wasn't comfortable with her continuing to delete messages from another guy who called to ask her out to the bar on a Friday night. So she changed his name to a girl's name in her phone so she could continue talking to him on occasion without upsetting me. They only text a few times, about once a week, but the fact that I feel she is hiding it from me makes me uneasy. In her defense, she has quit going to karaoke. She has unfriended the worst offenders on Facebook, though unblocked them. I have not seen evidence that she's talking to any of the guys who have hit on her. She has been home by 10 p.m. at the latest since I confronted her about staying out so late. As far as I can tell, she is just going to dinner with a girlfriend once a week now. However, because she has been deleting text and Facebook messages with a couple of these guys and maintains that she wants to still be friends with them, I am having a really hard time trusting that one of these relationships is not going to become something more if left unchecked. Part of me just wants to trust that she really will prevent these relationships from going too far. At the same time, I am reminded of so many close friends, and my mom, who ended up cheating on their spouses in relationships that started just as friends. I should also point out that I am not completely against her having guy friends, but the ones that I have not met make me nervous. She says she has invited them over for parties before, but plans haven't worked out. She is also planning an overnight trip to go clubbing at a city about 2 hours away next weekend. I have told her I'm not really comfortable with it, but I'm trying to trust that she will be faithful. So I guess that this comes down to that I don't really think that she has physically cheated on me, or that she is setting out to cheat on me. But she thinks I am an overbearing tyrant for her wanting to end relationships with these young single guys who seem to have no respect for our marriage. All her friends seem to agree that I am a terrible a-hole, and all my friends think that these relationships are unacceptable, or at least suspicious and unwise.
Thanks guys for staying with me. I hope you enjoyed the video. Bye!
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my 2nd year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.